Hey y'all, it's Kate from LoveStory, and today I'm going to be talking about memoirs. So I saw a video on Book Break, who was formerly drinking by my shelf, on her channel about November being nonfiction November, and a lot of people talking about nonfiction coming into November. And so I figured, well, I have a master's degree in nonfiction writing, so I definitely need to get on this train. And I'll link her video in the description below so you can see that. So I've already done an intro to nonfiction, and I've actually been meaning to film this video for a while now, so I figured I might as well just jump in right now while I'm thinking about it. And I'll link my intro video down there also to nonfiction video. So today I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite memoirs that I've read, and also some memoirs that I'm looking forward to reading very soon. So this is going to be a long video because I love nonfiction and I could talk about it all day, hence why I have a master's degree in it. But these are fallen over, of course. You always see those videos, and I knew it was going to be me eventually, which is why I try not to do this often, but I can't help the picture. So these are some of the books that I'm going to be talking about today, and I'll try to talk fast. I have just brief descriptions of these books, just so you get an idea of what they're talking about. And there's also a couple books that aren't on this stack that I am going to be talking about because I read them through audiobook and they are just amazing. So let's start first with those books and get those out of the way. And those are some more recent books too. So the first one you've heard me talk about before, Becoming by Michelle Obama. It's fabulous. I highly recommend the audiobook where Michelle Obama narrates it herself. It's amazing. Michelle Obama is an amazing person, a huge icon for women and girls growing up and in becoming. This is a memoir, and it starts off with her childhood in the south side of Chicago, and we get to see her in college and law school and meeting Barack and falling in love with Barack and then becoming the first lady and thereafter. And it's just an amazing, amazing memoir of her life thus far. And next we have Born of Crime Stories from a South African Childhood by Trevor Noah, who is, I think, the Daily Show or something like that. And Trevor writes about how his birth was literally a crime in South Africa. He has a white Swiss father and a black Xhosa mother. And this memoir has Trevor Noah's personality written all over it, stamped from the beginning. It's funny, it's interesting, and it's a great read. And again, I highly recommend the audiobook because it's amazing listening to him tell this story in his voice, and it's great. So those are the two books that I don't have currently with me because I listen to them audiobooks, and I'll put pictures of them up on the screen too. So now let's get into this giant stack. So first on my list is The Glass Castle by Jeanette, who also wrote Half Broke Horses and The Silver Star. And this book was amazing. It made me cry. I can't wait. I actually want to go back and reread it very soon, so I can't wait to do that. But this is, most of these descriptions from now on will come from Goodreads except for one, which if I remember I will add that in. So The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, a tender, moving tale of unconditional love in a family that, despite its profound flaws, gave the author the fiery determination to carve out a successful life on her own terms. And it is so moving and so amazingly written. It made me cry lots, and I can't wait to go back and read it again because it's one of my favorite memoirs ever. Next is a classic memoir, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou is an absolute goddess with words. She is one of the best writers ever, one of the best African American writers. I can't say enough about Maya Angelou and her words, And Goodreads has an amazing description of her amazing book. Sent by their mother to live with their devout, self-sufficient grandmother in a small southern town, Maya and her brother Bailey endure the ache of abandonment and the prejudice of the local poor white trash. At 8 years old and back at her mother's side in St. Louis, Maya is attacked by a man many times her age and has to live with the consequences for a lifetime. Years later in San Francisco, Maya learns that love for herself, the kindness of others, her own strong spirit, and the ideas of great authors, quote, I met and fell in love with William Shakespeare, end quote, will allow her to be free instead of imprisoned. Poetic and powerful, I know why the cage bird sings will touch hearts and change minds for as long as people read. And it's just one of the most amazing books ever written. If you haven't read it, make this one of the first books you read for Nonfiction November because it's just incredible. Next is The Liars Club by Mary Karr. And this is actually the one description that doesn't come from Goodreads. For some reason I couldn't find it on Goodreads, so I took this description off Amazon, but I love Mary Karr. She's also written Cherry and Lit. She's a great nonfiction writer, a classic. And so the Amazon description says, The Liars Club took the world by storm and raised the art of the memoir to an entirely new level. So true. Bringing about a dramatic revival of the form. Karr's comic childhood in an East Texas oil town brings up characters as darkly hilarious as any of J.D. Salinger's, The Catcher in the Rye author. A hard-drinking daddy, a sister who can talk down the sheriff at age 12, an oft-married mother whose accumulated secrets threaten to destroy them all. This unsentimental and profoundly moving account of an apocalyptic childhood is, quote, as funny, lively, and unputdownable, end quote, from the USA Today as it ever was. It's a great book. It's funny, it's witty, like I said, it's unapologetic. It's an amazing book, The Liars Club by Mary Karr. Pick it up. It's a great book. The next is one that is hit or miss for people, but if you've seen my previous videos, you know I am obsessed with Joan Didion, and so I couldn't talk about Memoirs without mentioning her. And I'm talking about The Year of Magical Thinking. This actually won the National Book Award for the year it was released, and so when it was released, people loved it, but I was assigned to read it in one of my nonfiction classes for my MFA, and I think I was the only one in the class that loved it. Everyone else didn't feel as strongly about it as I did, but I love Joan Didion. Her writing is so poignant and spot on, and The Year of Magical Thinking is such a moving book. So Goodreads says, this powerful book is Didion's attempt to make sense of the weeks and then months that cut loose any fixed idea I ever had about death, about illness, about marriage and children and memory, about the shallowness of sanity, about life itself. So in The Year of Magical Thinking, we see Joan Didion and her husband, a famous playwright who I can't think of his name right now, John something, I think. John Gregory Dunn, yes. So in this book we go through them discovering that their daughter is in a coma, and then spoilers, she dies, and this book is talking about the grief of that loss and how she gets through it, and it's just amazing. And if you look at the background of this book even more, I won't give away too much, but you wonder how she was able to write this book going through so much in her life. It's amazing, and it's a huge testament to Joan Didion herself, who's one of my icons and my all-time favorites. So that's The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion. Next up we have Tuesdays with Morrie, An Old Man, a Young Man, and Life's Greatest Lesson by Mitch Albom. You've heard me talk about Mitch Albom before with the 5 people you meet in heaven. Tuesdays with Morrie is along the same lines, but this is obviously nonfiction, and it's Albom's journey through rediscovery as one of his college professors, Morrie, is dying of ALS. It's touching, heartwarming, quick read, but so moving. Goodreads says he rediscovered Morrie in the last months of the older man's life, knowing he was dying of ALS, or motor neuron disease. Mitch visited Morrie in his study every Tuesday, just as they used to back in college. They rekindled relationship, turned into one final quote class, lessons in how to live. And it is just moving and so amazing. And as you can see, it's a very short read. It's a quick read, but it's a tearjerker. It gets you at the end. It sneaks up on you, but it's amazing. It's so heartwarming and amazing. Next up, we have A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway. And everyone knows Hemingway by The Old Man and the Sea, Sun Also Rises, A Farewell to Arms. He's a classic Lost Generation writer. He's one of my favorite classic writers. I love him, so I couldn't help but mention A Movable Feast. And this is about Hemingway's memories of his life as an unknown writer living in Paris in the 1920s. Are deeply personal, warmly affectionate, and full of wit, looking back not only at his own much younger self, but also at the other writers who shared Paris with him. James Joyce, Wyndham Lewis, Scott and Zelda Fitzgerald, also known as F. Scott Fitzgerald. He recalls that also known as the Lost Generation, and we have Picasso there too at the same time. An amazing group of writers all in Paris at the same time. Hemingway recalls the time when, poor, happy, and writing in cafes, he discovered his vocation. Written during the last years of Hemingway's life, his memoir is a lively and powerful reflection of his genius that scintillates with the romance of the city. And I love The Lost Generation. It's one of my favorite group of writers. And so I just loved this book and seeing them through Hemingway's young eyes, even though it was, like I said, in his later years. It was amazing attestation to The Lost Generation. So that's Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway, a classic. Another classic in which there is a movie out with, I believe, Leonardo DiCaprio, one of my favorite actors, young Leo, I should add, that this is This Boy's Life by Tobias Wolff, and this was an amazing memoir. This is one of the first memoirs that I read, and it still sticks with me today, maybe like 20 years later since I've read it. This unforgettable memoir by one of our most gifted writers introduces us to the young Toby Wolff. By turns tough and vulnerable, crafty and bumbling, and ultimately winning. Separated by divorce from his father and brother, Toby and his mother are constantly on the move, yet they develop an extraordinarily close, almost telepathic relationship. As Toby fights for identity and self-respect against the unrelenting hostility of a new stepfather, his experiences are at once poignant and comical, and Wolff does a masterful job of recreating the frustrations and cruelties of adolescence. His various schemes running away to Alaska, forging checks, and stealing cars lead eventually to an act of outrageous self-invention that releases him into a new world of possibility. And so that's This Boy's Life by Tobias Wolff, winner of the PEN/Faulkner Award. Amazing book, classic. All of these books you have to read. One of the things that you hear me say over and over in this video is one of my favorite memoirs. Definitely pick this book up for Nonfiction November. Of course, you get many different recommendations, but I wouldn't be a booktuber if I didn't give my own. So you have it. The next book, and we only have a couple more books. This is Night by Elie Wiesel, and this book I read in college when he came to speak at Penn State, and holy cow, what life-changing experience this was. This book, Night by Elie Wiesel, which is now part of a 3-book series, I guess. I haven't read the other books, but this book was the winner of the 1986, the year after I was born, Nobel Peace Prize, and it is a really small book, but packed with meaning and movement and tears and amazing. So Goodreads says, born in the town of Saget, Transylvania, Elie Wiesel was a teenager when he and his family were taken from their home in 1944 to Auschwitz concentration camp, and then to Buchenwald. Night is a terrifying record of Elie Wiesel's memories of the death of his family, the death of his own innocence, and his despair as a deeply observant Jew confronting the absolute evil of man. This new translation by his wife and most frequent translator, Mariah Wiesel, corrects important details and presents the most accurate rendering in English of Elie Wiesel's testimony to what happened in the camps and of his unforgettable message that this horror must simply never be allowed to happen again. So amazing book about the Nazi camps and World War II and surviving the Nazis. And the Holocaust is amazing, but you have to have tissues, and it will haunt you for a long time. It's haunted me since I read it back in, I think it was 2006 maybe when I read it. It's haunted me ever since then, but in a good way. The books do. And the other two books I have here are books that I read during my MFA, just like The Year of Magical Thinking. And like other books that I read there, these are books that I absolutely loved and I've returned to since then, but other people in my class didn't really feel the same way about it. So first we have Being with Rachel, A Story of Memory and Survival by Karen Brennan. And this book is about, this is a memoir of Karen going through, her daughter was in a coma and then came out with no memory, and so she's going through and trying to help her daughter remember her life, and seeing her daughter develop a new personality as she comes out of this coma, and it's just amazing, touching. It's funny and witty, and her daughter develops this new sense of humor that she hasn't seen before, and it's just unbelievable. I've read it a couple of times now, I think 3 times since I was assigned it, and it's still good after many rereads. And so I highly recommend Being with Rachel by Karen Brennan. And again, I'll list all of these books down in the description. And the last book I have in my stack is Looking After, A Son's Memoir by John Daniel. And this book is a memoir about John going through the experience of his mother developing and fighting Alzheimer's disease. And this is a very close topic to me, as I've lost 2 of my 4 grandparents to Alzheimer's disease. It's an amazing account of what loved ones go through when they have people that are fighting Alzheimer's. I've had 2 grandparents that have died of cancer and 2 grandparents that have died of Alzheimer's, and both are so hard, but seeing a grandparent that you've known your entire life have no idea who you are. In this case, it was his own mother. She had no idea who he was. And I've heard these stories through my mom, who took care of my grandparents while they were fighting this disease. It's just heartbreaking, and I'm getting tears just thinking about it. But this is one of my favorite memoirs that I've read, my favorite books that I've read through my MFA, and it's amazing, and it's heartbreaking, but it also gives hope in unexpected ways. And so I highly recommend Looking After by John Daniel. And so those are some of my favorite memoirs. Now, next, very quickly, because I don't know very much information about these, but I'm going to talk about some memoirs that I'm actually looking forward to reading soon, hopefully very soon. So first is Life by Keith Richards. And I've talked about musical memoirs before, and I'll link it here so you can see my video before. I've talked about the Elton John memoir, the Prince memoir, and the Andrew Ridgeley memoir from Wham. I really want to read this Keith Richards book because I love Keith Richards, and I love musical memoirs and memoirs by famous people, because it gives you that glimpse into their life that you don't get otherwise. And so I'm looking forward to Life by Keith Richards. The Making of Mariah Carey was recommended recommended by Book Breaks, and again, I love Mariah Carey. I love musical memoirs, and so I can't wait to read that. A memoir that was recommended by a middle-aged nerd seeks genre, I'll tag his channel down below so you can go check him out, is called In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. And this is a newer memoir, and he really loved this memoir and has recommended it on my other nonfiction video, so I can't wait to check that out. Thank you, Middle-Aged, for that recommendation. And I'm really looking forward, I haven't read yet any of Barack Obama's memoirs, but I'm looking forward to reading Dreams from My Father and Audacity of Hope in anticipation of his new memoir, A Promised Land, coming out in November. I believe it's November 17th. And so I will list all of the books that I talked about here in the description. I'll link all of the books, all of the videos that I've talked about. And I can't wait for Nonfiction November because I love nonfiction so much. So that's my video on memoirs. I hope I didn't talk too much. Let me know what questions you have, what recommendations you have, if you've read any of these books that I've talked about. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll talk to y'all again soon. Have a great day. Bye.